blockchain community when I was working with Women Who Code, and I'm currently working as a product manager for emerging technologies with Wiley Next, which falls under the Wiley Publications. I'm sure you might have heard of it. And yeah, really excited to be here. And thanks a lot, Adarsh, for the opportunity to do this meetup about Algorand. Always excited to talk about Algorand, not just as an ambassador, but also someone who really believes in this technology. Right, I've been in the blockchain space for over 4 or 5 years now, and I've started out with Ethereum, and now moving to all these different other frameworks which are offering the solution for scalability and other issues that are persistent in the legacy layer one blockchains, right? So before I get into the talk, I want to say that just to encourage more people to stake algos, I'm happy to do an algo giveaway. What I would request you to do is there is an Algorand wallet that I request you to download. So I don't know if my phone is visible, but it would be of a gray background and a white Algorand symbol. Once you download the wallet, all you need to do is send me your email ID as well as the wallet address. You can either send it to me over chat or you can email it to me. I'll drop my email in the chat. And for the top 10 folks, I'll be giving 50 algos. So you can stake them and you'll get rewards in your wallet, right? Um, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive right into the technical details, right? So Adarsh had already mentioned that the profile of the audience that is attending is going to be blockchain focused, as in you folks already have a fair idea of what blockchain is. So I'm not going to be doing the whole entire basics of blockchain. What are blocks? How are they connected? Cryptographic hash, etc. But dive right into how why Algorand, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Algorand architecture, the different components that make up Algorand. Of course, we'll also take a look at the core crux that makes up every blockchain, that is the consensus protocol, and how does that work in the Algorand scenario. And then I'll talk a little bit about the Algorand standard assets and the smart contracts. Just an introduction today, and then maybe going forward, we can do a deeper dive into how to create the assets using scripts, how to create smart contracts using Python, a Python wrapper for the actual smart contracts, which are written in a language called D. Okay. So, the first part that I'm going to be starting, Algorand, right? How did this all come into picture? When we think about permissionless blockchains, right? What are permissionless blockchains? To put it in simple words, they are decentralized databases that can be read by all, written by all, and immutable for all. Basically, what that means is anybody who wants to join, suppose there is a blockchain framework and you want to just go and create an account, you're allowed to do so because there are no permissions or membership related clauses that are associated with that particular blockchain, which comes into picture when you think about private blockchains. Why are these kind of blockchains important, right? These kind of blockchains are important because as we move from an era as we have evolved from an era where data was not given much importance to the point where we talk about data being the oil and stuff. It is important to understand what are the rules that are governing the circulation of this data, or that are governing the different transactions which eventually come in the form of data to us, right? When you think about a financial ecosystem and you see that there are transactions happening in the financial ecosystem which is based on a blockchain. It is important to understand who and all can participate in that ecosystem. And when blockchain started, it started, as we all know, as a permissionless entity, right? Where everybody across the globe is encouraged to participate in this framework and take advantage of the underlying technology. That's why permissionless blockchains are important, because permissionless blockchains allow not just a smaller entity to work with secure transactions, but the whole entire world, right? The governance is open to everybody who is living across the world at any point, at any part of the world, and whatever financial status they have, they are able to participate in this ecosystem. And that is why permissionless blockchains are important. Why do I talk about permissionless blockchains? Of course, because Algorand is a permissionless blockchain. Now, when we think about blockchain, what is the blockchain promise, right? How did it all start with? It all started with disintermediation, right? When we think about the first blockchain paper that ever came, the Bitcoin paper, it was right after the great financial crisis where a lot of huge financial organizations just ended up going bankrupt and people lost a lot of money as a result of which there was recession, etc., etc. And the first paper, the Bitcoin paper that came about, Satoshi focused on the fact that this particular technology will help remove unnecessary intermediaries who are present in the financial ecosystem. I focus on unnecessary because it is not all about just removing the banks or removing all kinds of authority. No, we do need some kind of regulation, some kind of governance with blockchain, but we want as much disintermediation and decentralization as possible. Having said that, what are the different when we think about blockchain? What are the different characteristics that we associate it with? We think about immutability, right? That whatever data is there, we don't want it to be easily tampered with. The second, in a permissionless blockchain system, is transparency, right? How are the transactions happening? What are the rules based on which the blocks will be added, right? How many number of validators are there? What is the underlying algorithm that is running this entire blockchain framework? What is the consensus protocol? And even otherwise, how much money is being transacted? These kind of information is what allows us to attach the word transparency to the entire blockchain ecosystem. And of course, trust, right? Whenever you join a particular blockchain framework, whenever you decide to download a wallet, for example, you trust that that particular technology will give you some value in return, right? um, Similarly, whenever you invest in a blockchain framework, whether it is in terms of money, whether in terms of your technical abilities or even your time, you trust that the underlying technology has the potential to be something down the line 5 years, 10 years, right? So when we think of the blockchain promise, we overall think about these three things: immutable, transparency, and trust, right? Now, there is when we talk about blockchain, there is something called the blockchain trilemma, right? That everybody has been talking about since Ethereum, since solutions on Ethereum ever kind of came into picture, right? What is the trilemma? The blockchain trilemma states that we cannot achieve scalability, security, and decentralization, all the three features in the same blockchain solution. In our solution, we will always have to compromise and pick either of these two, right? Scalability, of course, the ability to scale a blockchain solution to ensure that you are able to, build your use case in such a manner that the performance is fast and it is, the transactions are seamless. The amount of time taken for your transactions is not like 5 7 days, etc. Right? So scalability. Security, of course, you want your blockchain to be secure. You don't want an attack like the DAO attack to take place on your chain and then be able to, end up losing a lot of ether and then go back and, be needing to do a hard fork on your blockchain, etc. Right? You definitely want your solution to be secure. And the third and the most important point is decentralization. No matter what, you don't want your blockchain to be controlled by one group of people who are eventually either, hackable or, could be turning into having malicious intents, etc. Right? So you want your solution to be truly decentralized because that's the whole point of this, right? Now, Algorand, okay, I want to also, okay, let me go here first and then I'll go back to those slides. So the common flaw when you think about in the blockchain trilemma space is that a huge portion of the economy is controlled by a small portion of the economy. For example, in the case of Bitcoin, everything rests in the hand of the miners, and the miners honestly form a really, really small portion of your entire ecosystem, right? And when we also talk about other consensus protocols, so let's go back here. When we think about blockchain, we just majorly have two questions that we want to be answered from any blockchain framework that we work with, right? Whether it is Algorand, whether it is Eternity, whether it is Ethereum, whether it is Polkadot, right? How does your ecosystem create immutability? How does your framework create immutability, right? And how does the block selection happen, right? What decides that what is going to be the, or who decides what is going to be the next block in your blockchain? These are the two primary questions that we're looking for. As we know, the immutability part, if you're already technically well aware, then there are cryptographic hashes. The underlying hashes ensure that the data in the block is hashed in a way such that the blocks are linked to each other using the cryptographic hashes. And doing any kind of change or tampering with the blocks is extremely, extremely hard, because then that ends up having a dominoes effect on your entire blockchain. And then because it is distributed, then you need at least 51% of the folks to agree that the change that you have made is valid, right? So that takes care of your immutability. Now, when you think about choosing the block, right, we think about different consensus protocols, right? Um, Especially what we have been seeing for a long time, proof of work, right? Since the time Bitcoin ever came into picture, proof of work has been in place, where we heavily rely on computation to kind of make sure that everything is in place. You need to, as a miner, you need to solve an extremely complex problem, and once you do, you get the rights to add the next block, right? And that is, of course, that worked, but only for a shorter period of time, because the more number of people kind of came into picture, the computation became more and more difficult. It was extremely expensive and started becoming a waste of resources, right? The other one that we deal with is proof of stake, and proof of stake is different from proof of work in the sense that you don't really work with a computational problem, right? You don't have to solve a difficult puzzle, but your ability to choose a block, or your ability to work on choosing the next block, right, will depend on your stake in the network, as the name suggests, right? So there is no competition between the people in terms of solving the puzzle, but the algorithm chooses based on your stake. That is how much you have invested in the network. How many tokens of that particular network do you hold? Um, Again, the same thing over here, that in order to add a malicious block, you would have to own 51% of the cryptocurrency on the network. So to ensure that you are the person who's, whoever is selected by the algorithm based on the stake is not malicious, we need to ensure that that particular cryptocurrency is being owned by, or it's being distributed, in a way that not one person can just hoard 51% of all the cryptocurrency and try to do some malicious activities. In this case, there is no reward for creating a block, so the block creator would take a transaction fee. Now, there have been a lot of proof of stake algorithms that have come into picture earlier, right? You have delegated proof of stake, where you assign a particular group of people. So, for example, if you have 10 people in the network, right, there are two or three people who are assigned as delegates in the proof of in this particular network, and they are the ones who will get to choose the block, validate the block, etc. uh, the whatever proof of stake algorithms have been there so far before pure proof of stake, which is the one that Algorand is based on, also kind of violate the decentralization property, because you eventually end up giving the control or the authority to, again, a group of people who once those group of people, and they may necessarily not be malicious, right, but once those group of people have been identified already, right, prior to the block selection, then what happens is they are easily hackable, because the hacker is already familiar with the group of people who are identified and can just throw in whatever different types of attacks their way, flood their network in such a way that they are unable to go ahead and validate the blocks, or whatever different types of attacks. They are easily possible when those particular folks who have been identified as delegates are identified early on, right? These are some of the flaws that you see in the existing proof of stake algorithms. Again, now coming back to this, the common flaw, a combination of both proof of work and the existing proof of stake algorithms, where most of them have a huge portion of the whole blockchain framework is controlled by a small portion of the participants. What this where this highly affects is the security part of things, where you are easily able to, again, like I said, hack those folks. This is where Algorand comes into picture, right? Algorand is a blockchain framework that is built on a pure proof of stake consensus protocol. As we go, I'll also talk about what pure proof of stake is, and I'll also show a really nice video. But the idea of Algorand, and why I personally believe that Algorand is going to be one of the good blockchain frameworks going forward, is heavily for me gravitating towards the co-founder, which is Silvio Micali. He is a visionary, and he has been in this space for a really long time, doing a lot of amazing research. He's a Turing Award winner, right? So you can some of the things for us, I think, when you think about working with a blockchain framework, you also have to think about what is the vision of that framework, right? What do they kind of want going forward? So the idea of blockchain is to have a borderless economy, right? To enable everybody across the globe to be able to be a part of the financial ecosystem. And that's what, though of course when we talk about ecosystem, we right now are referring a lot to the financial ecosystem, because DeFi solutions are the majority of the solutions in this space. But having said that, there are a lot of other places where blockchain frameworks like this could definitely make a difference. If you think about governance, right? How do you ensure seamless governance, or how do you put up governing rules, whether it is a body, an organization? You can definitely use blockchain in that context. Several other use cases, of course. But when you think about a blockchain framework, always do your research in terms of who are the people behind the framework, what is the vision of that framework, etc. For me personally, it's the vision of the blockchain that attracts me. So that's why, of course, I started this, being the ambassador, etc. Now, let's talk about what pure proof of stake is, right? When we think about pure proof of stake, or when this blockchain framework came about, Algorand, the main assumption by Professor Silvio is that there is an honest majority of money, right? Now, for a minute, let me just replace the one word money with people, right? And think about our society. In our society, for any society to exist, right, it is important that there is an honest majority of people. What happens in a imagine a small group of people, right? And they are a part of the society, of course, but let's call them society, right? We have 10 people. What happens is, if there are more criminals than honest people, the entire society will end up collapsing, right? Because there'll be more criminal activities. People will not be able to, honest people will first of all not be able to survive, right? They will end up collapsing. And then the criminals who survive will fight amongst themselves because of their dishonest mindset, and they will also end up collapsing. So what happens when you think about a society is that there should always be a majority of honest people. They try to keep the ecosystem up and running. They try to keep the society up and running, right? And this is the main assumption that is behind the pure proof of stake protocol, that is behind the Algorand blockchain itself, right? That when peers join, or when this particular blockchain framework is made and there are people who are joining or becoming a part of the framework, the assumption is that there is an honest majority of money. What happens if there are more dishonest people is that the value of the blockchain goes down. And because it's a proof of stake based blockchain, those who are dishonest, the money that they have invested, the stake that they have invested, will go down. Right, the value of that will go down because of the malicious activities of the overall blockchain. So they will try to balance the blockchain by trying not to increase the malicious activities. Hi, something happened.
No,
I
yeah,
was zoomed.
I think yeah, people are joining, but I think something happened. Say like all the participants are actually moving to move to the rooms.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. So
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I just closed all the rooms.
no
I think two
problem.
participants per room was created. I don't know how it happened.
Yes, yes, yes. I was there with another participant. I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
sure.
because I was actually with another participant in one. So hope
Okay,
everyone will join back soon. I think almost 11 hour back.
no
Sorry
problem.
about that. Sorry about that because I was also using Baby for the first time.
No problem. Same here.
Yeah.
I'm also using it for the first time, so it's okay.
Okay.
All experimental. Can you tell me where I stopped? Because I kept speaking, I didn't know.
Okay. So we're actually in the proof of stake. Like you're actually mentioning about the proof of stake kind of thing.
Okay, okay. Did I mention that the honest majority of money part, the main
Yes. Yes.
assumption?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Okay, 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 okay. Because that is underlying foundation. If I don't mention
Okay.
that.
Fine.
Okay, all right. All right, then let me kind of just run a little bit and move to the technical parts, otherwise we'll miss out. Yeah, okay. So the several technical advantages of using the Algorand blockchain. Of course, like I mentioned, the scalability issues in the blockchain trilemma. I mean, all the three issues in the blockchain trilemma. Algorand aims to solve those issues by its underlying architecture, by the way the nodes are created, or the way we can create assets, etc. The idea is to provide true decentralization. That is what pure proof of stake is aimed to do. The computation is very trivial. It's not so you can create a block within 4 to 5 seconds. That's one of the biggest advantages of Algorand, right? As compared to the other blockchain frameworks where you take at least a minute or 20, 30 seconds to kind of create a block. You can create a block within 4 to 5 seconds in Algorand. The finality of payments is very straightforward. So, what that means is that this blockchain architecture has been designed in such a way that the probability of a fork happening in the blockchain is extremely, extremely less. It is, I think, something into 10 to the power minus 38, or some number like that, right? So, the probability of a fork happening is very, very less. So the finality of the transactions is very fast. Scalability, of course, it offers scalability because its computation and finality are right on point. It is very easy to scale the blockchain and, of course, use it for various use cases. Security, as I mentioned, as I will also talk about the pure proof of stake and how the actually underlying consensus protocol works. You will see how it is more secure than the other blockchain frameworks. So before I share with you the steps for the pure proof of the consensus protocol, there are certain things to keep in mind when we think about security in the Algorand context. That even if there is an adversary who's trying to attack the blockchain, right? The adversary cannot, even if they try to immediately corrupt any player in the ecosystem, right? The ecosystem is built in such a way that the consensus protocol is built in such a way that even if one player becomes corrupt, which is in the case of, if you think about delegated proof of stake or something, right? There are only few delegates who have the ability to vote. Now, if one player becomes corrupt, then your whole ecosystem comes into the security limelight, that it becomes insecure. But in the Algorand case, that is not going to happen, because there are two phases for the consensus protocol proposal, which I'll talk about just now. Even if the adversary can control all the bad players, right? Even then, your Algorand is secure. Even if the adversary tries to attack the protocol and the network itself, right? Even in these situations, Algorand is secure. Why? Because your all of your transactions that are based out of that are based in Algorand require require signatures, right? And the fact that an adversary cannot forge the digital signatures easily, right, is one of the primary principles that makes Algorand secure, right? Let me also share with you the two phases. So now I'll talk about the two phases of the consensus protocol, which will help us tie everything to the security part, right? So the first phase is the proposal phase, and this is a consensus protocol, right? What happens in the proposal phase is a random token is randomly selected amongst all the tokens. So who can participate in the consensus protocol? Anybody who has an account, of course, who's a part of the network, and you have to ensure that you're setting your account to become online. So your accounts on Algorand have two modes: online mode and offline mode. When you set your account to become online is when you can participate in the consensus. And of course, you have to be running an Algorand node to do so. So once your account is online, you become a part of course, you whatever tokens you have, your stake, right, becomes a part of the selection process. You're a participant now in the consensus protocol. What happens is the first step, a random token is selected, and then the corresponding public key of that particular random token that has been selected becomes known to all the users, right? Post this particular user who has been selected randomly proposes signs and propagates a new block, right? At this point is where if the adversary tries to attack this particular user, the only thing, so because this user is selected randomly, the adversary does not know who the user is going to be. So they cannot attack this user early on. And this is the first first step which kind of ensures security, right? Because the first user itself is selected randomly, whoever is going to propose the block, whoever is going to validate the block. And once this user is selected by the ecosystem, immediately this user proposes signs and chooses the new block, right? Now, in order for the adversary to attack this network or attack this particular step, the adversary should be able to forge the digital signature of this user, which is extremely difficult in this case, right? But is this enough? Is this enough to just have one level of randomization to ensure security? Well, no. That's why we have another phase, which is called the agreement phase after the proposal phase, which wherein again 1,000 tokens are randomly selected amongst all the tokens. That is all the people who are participating in the consensus, right? And once these 1,000 tokens are selected, their keys become known to all the users, and these users agree on the block proposed by the first user and sign this particular block. and this is when your whole consensus protocol ties together and your block is added onto the blockchain. So these two phases are the ones that are very, very important and ensure that there is high level of security that is associated with your blocks, right? Now you may have a question as to the first one. Okay, this is one token is randomly selected, that is fine. Now the second one, there are 1,000 tokens that are randomly selected, right? So who selects these second set of people who are going to get into the agreement phase, right? This committee is actually selected by itself. So like we said, there is going to be true decentralization when it comes to Algorand. The second agreement phase committee, the 1,000 tokens, the committee selects itself. How does that happen? Each of those participating nodes who are participating in the consensus will keep running their own lotteries, right? The algorithm that is behind the lottery is in such a way that if they have won, right, it will say that that you have won, but there is no way that they can cheat because they have to run a puzzle on their own system and be able to. So if they win, then their particular ticket that they have won will be propagated, and in such a way the 1,000 users for phase 2 will be selected. So winners will propagate their winning ticket and their opinions about the next block, that is the block that was being proposed by the first ever user. So this because of this and this randomness, that is the phase 1 and the phase 2, the proposal phase and the agreement phase, happen every time a new block has to be mined, right? So both the both the users in the proposal phase and in the agreement phase are chosen randomly when every block is mined, right? Though the algorithm has been written in such a way that this whole thing happens within 4 to 5 seconds, so if your block is mined, it ensures a level of randomness such that the adversary cannot attack the ecosystem easily, right? This is very important to understand this consensus protocol and how it works, because this forms the crux of why one should use Algorand for their solutions, right? I have a video about this consensus protocol.
Excuse me, Jan is not. You're not audible now. Hello. No, no, not at audible. I can't hear you. You're not at audible. Okay. Or can you just rejoin? Yeah, please rejoin it. Okay, sure. Hello. No, not at we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. Uh, no, I can't hear. Please check whether your input is like as you're playing a YouTube video. Please check whether the mic input is.
Is this? Am I audible
Yeah,
now?
now audible. Yeah. Now I can hear. Now I can hear.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. I think we are using
Okay, please
Telugu
hear.
for the first time, so it's all various
Okay,
kind of problem solving at this point. Okay. Let me.
okay, please carry on. Please carry on.
Yeah, I just want to quickly cover, three main things. One is the architecture, the node architecture, about Algorand standard assets and the smart contracts. Just an introduction, so we have some time for questions as well. All right. Okay, so Algorand's network architecture is created in such a manner that it solves the trilemma of decentralization, scalability, and security. As we've already seen in the consensus protocol video, that there are there are participation nodes which participate specifically in the consensus protocol and run the VRF in their own systems, so that the for the verification or the certification, there is no dependency on other nodes. So they are individually winning lottery and propagating that yes, I'm these are my views on the next block, selected or not selected, whatever. And when the a majority is reached, that particular block is added onto the blockchain, right? So when we talk about participation nodes, which are participating and proposing and voting, right? There are also another type of nodes called relay nodes. These relay nodes, are they serve as the hub and connect to many other nodes, right? So for example, it is possible that your node you may not want to participate in the consensus protocol, right? You might be just using your node to run the blockchain, and then maybe use it for like testing your application or something, right? So in that case, what kind of nodes do you use? You can use these nodes called relay nodes, right? And relay nodes are also, as I'll show you in the architecture diagram, they are being able to connect all the participation nodes together, right? So your relay nodes are basically your central network or your body of the network itself, right? Um, Relay nodes generally have high bandwidth network connection. So from your participation nodes, you need to send the information, right? Participation nodes need to say that, yes, I have won this lottery, and I am the person who is going to provide my opinion. I'm going to vote on this particular proposing block, etc. Right? In order to do that, you have these relay nodes which have high bandwidth network connection, right? They are often located at internet exchange points to decrease the propagation time of the votes, right? And then you have, of course, participation nodes. Participation nodes are the ones that hold your participation keys for proposing and voting on blocks. They represent the stake of a particular address, and anyone who's a part of the network may host a participation node. So this is a rough diagram of the Algorand network architecture, right? As you can see, there are relay nodes and non-relay nodes. Relay nodes are the ones where cross communication is allowed, right? Now you have already seen why this protocol is fast, because individual participation nodes are working on their own and then sending across the votes, right? So there is no cross communication between the participation nodes. Whereas relay nodes, there is cross communication because they are taking the different votes, and then they are the ones that are telling that these many votes have come to propose this particular block. These many votes have come to propose this particular block. They are the ones who are notifying to all the different nodes. Right, so they are basically, they are the ones that, like I mentioned, they communicate with other relay nodes and route the blocks to all the connected non-relay nodes as well, right? If you see technically, both the non-relay nodes and the relay nodes can participate in consensus, but this architecture is bifurcated in this way, or it is recommended to work in this way just so that your consensus mechanism is as fast as possible, right? Algorand strongly recommends that only the non-relay nodes or the participation nodes participate in consensus, so that the relay nodes can just be used for faster communication. In terms of the overall functionality, the difference between the nodes is only in their configuration as to how they work, but not the software. As such, the nodes, the underlying software and everything remains the same for the nodes. Both of these relay nodes and non-relay nodes, of course, can communicate with each other, right? Because the relay nodes are ensuring that there is communication across the network, right? Whereas when you see participation nodes, they are primarily used as a user's agent in the chain. They are used for participating in the consensus protocol, right? They propose and vote on blocks on behalf of the user stake within the entire consensus algorithm. As you can already see, the relay nodes and the non-relay nodes can also communicate with each other, right? And it is important to remember that this primary bifurcation is to ensure that the entire process of consensus is really fast. So your relay nodes are basically relaying the information really fast. They have high bandwidth. Your participation nodes, whereas, are running the algorithm, they're running the random function, and then participating in the consensus. Now, let us talk about two important layer one components that primarily make all the difference when you're trying to create applications on the Algorand blockchain. The first one is Algorand Standard Assets, also known as ASAs, and the second one are Algorand Smart Contracts, also known as ASCs. Right. So what are ASAs? Algorand standard assets are just like any other asset that you can, any asset that you want to digitize or tokenize, you can do it on top of the Algorand blockchain, and you can create these assets right on the layer one. Right. There are a lot of challenges when it comes to tracking the assets, and that's why now we are slowly moving to asset digitization, right? Digitizing, creating a digital copy of every asset, whether it is document or whether it is a physical asset. Only once we have a digital copy can we apply blockchain on top of these assets, right? Because we store the, suppose if you think about supply chain, we store the life cycle or the supply chain life cycle of a particular asset, but we can only do it when the asset is digitized. That's the only way its information can be stored on the blockchain. So for the digital assets, you can create tokens, that is asset tokenization on Algorand, which will, of course, help you with core security. Then there is simplified usage. The assets are fairly simple to create, and the transaction finality is happening on a high performance blockchain. That is, your blocks are getting created within 5 seconds. Before getting started with the assets, there are some things that you need to kind of some technical know-hows when you want to create an asset on top of the Algorand blockchain. A single account is permitted to create up to 1,000 assets, right? This can be different assets, same assets, etc. For every asset an account creates or owns, its minimum balance is increased by zero point 0.1 algos. So you are actually incentivized to create assets on the Algorand blockchain, right? Um, Now, one interesting thing is that before a new asset can be transferred to another account, that particular account or the receiver must opt in to receive the asset. This ensures another layer of security that is added during your when you deal with assets on Algorand in general, right? And there is a receiving an asset section that is there on the documentation page, which I'll be sharing with you. You can also read more about assets over there. If any transaction is issued that would violate the maximum number of assets for an account or not meet the minimum balance requirements, the transaction will fail. So certain advantages of the Algorand standard assets, they are really fast and secure, right? Low execution cost on the blockchain platform itself, and it is easy and simple issuance on the Algorand blockchain to issue these assets. I'll come back to this little later. I'll share the link with you. The last thing that I want to talk about are the Algorand smart contracts, right? Of course, as we all know, smart contracts contain the basic logic, business logic of your application. That is basically going to tie everything together, right? What do you want to do? What do you want to build on top of this blockchain? You write that particular business logic using your smart contracts. Can create two types of smart contracts. One is stateless smart contracts and another is stateful smart contracts. Like I said, all transactions in Algorand must be signed, right, by either an account or a multi-signature account, right? And I said that this digital signature, as you also saw in the video, acts as one of the pivotal game changers, right, in order to prevent an adversary from attacking. So you can use the stateless smart contracts to replace the signature authority for transaction. Basically, instead of having a signature authority, you can put it all in your smart contract, right? With stateless smart contracts, the transaction can be signed with the logic that you're writing, which Algorand is also known as a logic signature. Stateless smart contracts can be broken down into two primary modes of use. One is contract accounts and signature delegation. So you can either have contract accounts where you are, writing some logic and using it for signatures, or you can use the logic signature and perform signature delegation. So essentially, stateless smart contracts are not used to store information as such, right? They are only used to delegate your signature process. Now we come to the stateful smart contracts. Stateful smart contracts are the smart contracts that live on the chain and they are used to keep track of some form of global or local state for the contract. As we all know, if you're already familiar with programming with either Solidity or Hyperledger or the Solidity smart contracts or chain code or whichever you have worked with, you know that the state, some variables whose state needs to be permanently stored or that lives on the chain, they are embedded into your smart contracts, right? And this is where your stateful smart contracts come into picture. Whenever you build an application that is intended to run on the Algorand blockchain, your stateful smart contracts are the ones that come into picture because they are the ones where you will write the variable, your functions, etc., etc. In addition to functioning in a standalone fashion, that is your smart contracts being standalone, they can also be combined with other Algorand layer one, for example, layer one features, for example, creating assets, right? You can create assets and then plug them into your smart contracts and then produce more complex application, right? So these are some of the things that you can do with the help of your stateful smart contracts. Your smart contract language in Algorand is known as TEAL, T-E-A-L. It is similar to your assembly level language. It is very close to the machine. Therefore, we have a wrapper in Python, which is also known as PyTeal. So you can use PyTeal to actually write your smart contracts and execute them, your stateful smart contracts, right? Another thing that I want to share with you before we close is that there the Algorand Foundation has a lot of good documentation where both for developers and non-developers, where you can kind of go and read about the different characteristics of the features, the different features of Algorand. So if you see, you have smart contracts, Algorand standard assets, the atomic transfers. There is a special feature called rekeying where, in case you lose your, you use your public-private key pair, right? So you don't have to. In case you lose your one of the keys, then you can use the existing key to regenerate the key again. You don't have to regenerate the entire key pair all over again, right? So that is an interesting new feature that's come in, and all sorts of things, right? You can go and read about the standard ASAs, the different example asset types. This is what I want to show you earlier, like where they are being used. You can create fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, restricted fungible tokens. You can use them in gamings, as stable coins, as loyalty points, as system credits, etc. Right? So, and then atomic transfers, what do they mean, and in what context? In Algorand, how do they fit into the whole context about rekeying? All of you'll find a lot of documentation on the Algorand page, right? So this is one of the good places to kind of go and experiment. Let me stop. Okay, I'll just put the link here. And there is also the foundation page. Let me see where that developer, yeah. So if you go to developer.algorand.org, it will talk about the different SDKs using which you can work, right? So you have various SDKs using which you can create the accounts. You can create ASAs. So I have a video that talks about how you can create an ASA using Python, right? Similarly, there are other JavaScript SDKs. I think there is Golang as well. So you can choose from all these SDKs and go to build your applications, right? And then there are also various tutorials on writing contracts using PyTeal, which is also fairly recent, and it's very cool. So you can also check those out. You can see that there are a lot of applications that are there. Example, digital exchange, smart contract application, etc. Right? So here are some of the examples that you can work with if but I would suggest to get started, you should just go to the documentation and read about each of the features. You can also read about the accounts that I spoke about. How can you run your own node, right? Definitely run your own node. It doesn't take much. And then I would suggest to start with your CLI, which is called a CLI tool called Goal, GOAL, using which you can just experiment, right? How to create accounts and how do things work? How can you create your wallet and save your keys, etc. Right? So you should definitely start with Goal and then move on to running your own node, and then you just try to create your small applications like creating ASAs, transferring money, right? Payment transaction. Just do those small applications using the SDK of your choice, and then move on to PyTeal. So this would be the trajectory that I suggest to kind of take it. And then there are, of course, like I said, a lot of other applications that you can take a look at and see if you want to build something on top of Algorand, and if yes, how can you get started? Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I had for the introductory talk today. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for your time. I know that we ran a little over, but that's yeah, because I joined late. Again, my apologies for that. And yeah, I hope you are able to explore more in on Algorand, and we'll definitely have more workshops where we can do the hands-on part, specifically like maybe taking one particular SDK. Again, like I said, trying to build your ASAs, trying to do the different types of transactions, and see how you can codify those. That would definitely be interesting. And maybe start with learning a little bit of writing smart contracts, leaning towards building an application on top of this blockchain. Again, I think that would also be pretty interesting to this crowd, especially if you're interested in building applications. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time. Hope you all had a good fruitful Saturday learning something about this interesting new blockchain, right? And if you have any questions, feel free to just put it out there, or I'm also happy to take it later. You can also email me. Also, don't forget the giveaway. If you have downloaded your wallet, please email me your wallet address at my email that I just put it up over here. And yeah, you'll see some algos in your wallet. Just take them, play around, and feel free to see how it goes. So yeah, thanks a lot, Adarsh. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope everybody had a good time. And please feel free to drop any questions on Algorand to me, and I'll try to get that answer either by me or by the community. Whoever can get it.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for this wonderful session on introduction to Algorand. Hope it was really helpful to all the participants. I know, like, most of the people have started exploring Algorand into the basics. In fact, I'm also learning on PyTeal and all, like how I can write a smart contract.
Cool.
Because I think most of them will be into Ethereum and Hyperledger, but I know, like, this is like a new kind of things. So, like, if you have any questions, feel free to ask right now. Anyway, I have a question. Say, like, I've seen, like, there are a lot of smart contracts coming up in PyTeal. So is there something, say, like, the contracts which we have written in Solidity or something other in the Ethereum, can we, like, convert it into a bytecode kind of things running on Algorand? Anything of that
I
thing is
think
there in
not yet, but as we speak, I think that is probably in progress. I think right now, because if you see the
Yeah,
structure of Teal, right, it is very, very close to the assembly
exactly.
language. So if we do have a
Yes.
bytecode, I think it would be fairly easy to compare that and convert into Teal,
Yes.
and then maybe work with PyTeal.
Yes.
What is happening is people are more into, because everybody's into high level languages, they are more attracted towards PyTeal instead of Teal itself.
Yes, because Python,
Yeah,
yeah, Python will be
because
more
the
interesting than the
wrapper
Solidity.
library is more interesting than the bytecode level, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
if you make a small mistake in
Yeah.
the bytecode level, there is no coming back from it. There is no coming back. If you push
Understand.
something wrong on
Understand.
the stack, it's just all over.
Yeah.
But high level languages kind of give you that abstraction. So PyTeal is actually becoming more famous than Teal itself. And there is an
Yes.
editor
Yeah.
as well that somebody from the community has created, an online editor, I believe, for PyTeal.
Okay.
So I think that would
Okay.
be also cool to explore. But yeah, let's hope what you're saying kind of can be made. It would be a cool project, I
Sure.
think.
Sure. Sure. So yeah, that's from my side. I think if any of the participants have any queries, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I seem to be the only one chatting.
Yeah.
Nobody else is even on chat.
So I think most of them are actually
Yeah,
starting
yeah,
to
yeah.
explore.
That
So I
makes
think this is
sense.
a perfect beginner
Sure,
kind of
of
things.
course.
So yeah, so we will conduct some future webinars also. Say, like, monthly once or bi-monthly. We'll try to arrange
Yeah.
some webinars so that people can start learning. Because from next onwards, we will start focusing on something on coding stuff also. Say, like, learning how to start building your projects on
Right.
Algorand and all. So anyway, I think this is like the perfect start where we can start learning the things. I will have the recording also. I'll also publish it in the Algorand channels and all. I will share with the participants also so that you can have the learning things. And as she was rightly pointing out, start with the developer resources or start with the basic resources which are there in the Algorand
Yes.
portal, so that that the community can also start learning on the basics. So I think if there are no further queries, we can wind up the
Yes.
session.
Also, reminder to
And
send me your Algorand wallet address if you are able to
sure,
download it. If not, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to miss a free giveaway, but that's completely your call. But
yeah, I think that's really interesting for the community also. Say, like, they just
yeah,
have a feel of what exactly is
exactly.
happening in a
That's the
wallet,
idea.
and
Like to give them
definitely,
the
yeah,
ability to stake and see, okay, like what periodically do they get
sure,
the rewards? How do the tokens get circulated? Because it's also important to understand the token economics behind the blockchain that you're building applications on top of, because you definitely want to use that
exactly.
at some point.
Even Ethereum is now moving to proof of stake,
Yes,
so it's like a fairly good idea to
learn.
learn
Yeah,
it. Okay.
for sure.
So I know, like, time is exceeding. So anyway, thanks to all the participants, and once again, thanks to Granalakshmi for accepting our invitation and being a part of this event. Hope you can join for further events also, and we'll definitely invite you for the next events
Thank you so
also.
much, Ajas.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone for joining. Have a great
Yeah.
weekend.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all the participants. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.